Hey everybody, just checked out this new demo on Steam. Just came out a couple days ago called BAKUDO. I really like it. I think it's super sick. And I definitely recommend that you guys give it a shot. I do have some notes if the developers are watching. There's a couple of things that I think if you iron these things out going forward, and I know this is a demo, so you probably are just kind of putting the idea out there, but definitely it's got a ton of potential, and I see this being super fun. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the demo and give my thoughts on it. To start out with a lot of the positives so far, I feel like the overall core of the game is super there. I think it's a really unique concept of like this sort of 1v1 dodgeball anime game. In terms of anime aesthetics, I think the visuals are really good. I think they look great. It's got sort of the classic cel shaded feel. The graphic design is going in a great direction, I think. It reminds me a lot of Kill la Kill, where it's sort of black and red. It's very flat, not a whole lot of gradients. It's got that big chunky Japanese font. It's leaning more towards sort of a new modern techno feeling with a lot of the additional secondary elements. It looks great. The cel shaded art style is really good. Even the main character, actually, in her design, she's got red in her hair. She wears black and red. Reminds me of Ryuko. Am I biased because Ryuko is my number one favorite girl from any anime ever? Yes. Do I care? No. The music overall is really good. It's got that futuristic sort of techno vibe to it. Works great. I don't mind it. It's fun listening to it while playing. The controls overall feel pretty precise with some exceptions. There is a little bit of I'm not even sure what to call it, but when you change directions in the air, especially when it comes to the air dodge, there is a little bit of a jump where the character teleports from one place to another place, kind of like the game is trying to catch up to her position, but it's not quite there. It looks slightly janky, and it sort of does detract from the movement just a little bit, but that can be nailed in. Overall, I think it feels good. Ground movement feels good. The air dodge feels really fast and quick. I like that. It just goes as soon as you press the button. That feels super responsive. Overall, I'm kind of happy with the controls. Feel pretty good. I was playing personally on controller. I did do a little bit of mouse and keyboard. Felt okay. Not the biggest deal. The one difference I will note is that on controller, because the left joystick controls whether or not you throw a curveball. So no input on the left joystick is a straight throw, and inputting left or right on the joystick gives you a curveball in the corresponding direction. And my only concern was that because the left joystick also has to do with movement, it felt a little strange to, for example, move right but throw a left curveball, if that makes sense. You can't put the joystick in both directions. You have to decide, if I'm going to throw a left curveball here, I'm going to need to move to the left. And in a game that might need more precise movement, I would maybe like to see the addition of a button combination for the curveballs instead of using the joystick. Also, because the joystick has degrees to which it can be pushed, that also feels a little weird compared to a keyboard method where you just press the button combination and it just works. You know what I mean? So maybe a button combination on the controller as well would work. For example, right bumper is currently to throw. Maybe right bumper plus X. I'm thinking of an Xbox controller. The left face button would be to throw a left curveball, and then right bumper and the right face button would be to throw a right curveball. That could possibly work. That way you can separate the movement, and throwing the ball gives the player more control. Up to you. That's what I would say. Overall, feels pretty good. Just quickly, in terms of the sound effects, they're quite good. I really like the spike sound effect. That one is really nice, as well as the sound effect when you parry. That feels really good. I perhaps would like to see a little more hit stop when you get a parry or when you get a spike. That way, it really feels like that big volleyball hit. You know what I mean? Like in anime, the character, I'm thinking about Haikyuu, right? The character goes up, they hit the ball. There's like maybe a couple of seconds of the ball deforming in their hand. They're staying there, frozen in midair. That's that hit stop. You know what I mean? And then the ball whoosh, it flies from their hand. That's a really, really big. That's a really big selling of impact, and I think some hit stop on parry and on the spike would do wonders. I think that would do great. In terms of the overall combat and the way that the game goes, this is where I think I have the most notes. And we will start for number one with the camera. I'll be honest, it's not the best. I dabbled with both, trying to lock the camera and not locking it. First off, I don't know a game that has you double tap the button to lock onto the enemy. Usually it's just one button. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and there's a separate control thing for just one button, so I'll give you that if I don't remember that. But secondly, if you lock onto the enemy, the ball has such wide patterns on the arena that it is entirely possible that the ball goes off screen, and it's really hard to track in those cases. Perhaps an option to lock the camera to the ball would be really cool. Maybe lock onto the enemy only when they're holding onto the ball, and then when they throw the ball, move the camera lock to the ball, or something like that. Because what I decided was optimal, honestly, was to simply keep a static camera and try to move the camera as little as possible. And when you do that, it just makes the game feel a little less dynamic because the camera's not moving, right? There are definitely going to be, as I saw in the preview trailer, some fights where moving the camera is going to be really important because it's a 360 arena or something like that. But I would like to see the camera expanded upon. Nextly, in terms of a positive of the combat, learning the boss patterns is really fun. If not to use the Dark Souls comparison that every video game journalist uses, even though I'm not a video game journalist, I'm just some fucking dweeb. It feels like learning a Dark Souls boss. You learn the patterns. You probably fail the first couple of times, at least I did. Maybe I'm just bad at the video game. You learn their tells, which are all really clear, by the way. It is super clear whenever the boss is going to be doing something, except for when they do the sneaky ass, especially that first boss, does this one sneaky ass, insanely fast throw. It is reactable. I was able to react to it eventually, but damn, that beat my ass at the very beginning. Otherwise, the tells are really good. They're all very clear. The little sparks of color also help in that regard. For example, when they spike, when it's going to be a parryable move, it's orange. When they're just throwing it normally, it's red. When it's unblockable and you got to dodge it, it's red. Sorry, the regular moves are blue. I mean, they do big wind-up moves where, like, obviously if they're doing the big wind-up, they're going to throw it fast. Good. All that, quite good. Although in terms of some of the bosses, well, there's two bosses. In terms of boss weak points, I think some of them were a tiny bit unclear. On the first boss, my first attempt was actually to throw the ball curving around to the back of the boss to hit his like back smoke thing, because there was like a big orange puff of smoke coming out of it. And so I thought to myself, oh, maybe that's like a signal that his back, where his engine is the weak point, because that tends to be sort of a common weak point on robots in video games. Again, maybe my assumption. Eventually I figured out, oh, he's blocking with one arm, you've got to throw it to the opposite arm. But that didn't seem the most clear at first, but I got it. It works fine. Again, you learn the patterns. On the second boss, there also were a couple of times where I wasn't sure whether to curve the ball left or right or to throw it straight. For example, I'll show a particular pattern on the screen here where the boss is standing on one side of the arena. He is slightly leaned a little bit. He's got one arm straight up into the air. And so I thought to myself, oh, I must have to curve the ball towards that side. But it turns out you just throw it straight. Stuff like that. Maybe making it a little more clear in those cases. There's definitely some straight throws that are super clear. There's one where he puts both of his arms up in the back, stuff like that. That works fine. But there were a couple of tells that were not quite so clear. Second to last thing, the combat is a little slow. The pace is a little slow, I think. There is really, at least in this demo, and I understand there might be more later, there's no reason for me to move around the arena, right? The only reason that there are to move is that I just parried a shot and the shot is bouncing up and I've got to go up and spike it. That is really the only reason to move around in not that situation. You just don't need to move at all. For most of the bosses, I figured that it was mostly optimal to just stand in the middle of the arena, keep my camera completely centered, don't even move, and just focus 100% on the tells of the boss. Maybe there can be some environmental hazards or something like that to keep the player moving. Maybe the boss, or maybe certain bosses have tells where they throw the ball to one side of the arena or the other side of the arena and you've got to move over there. Maybe something like that would be good. I think also adding the timer that you see when you finish the level to the in-game HUD somewhere would also potentially help to create a sense of urgency for the player, because there were definitely times when I had the ball and I was just sort of carrying it, running around, and I want there to be urgency for me to throw it, right? Currently, I can just sort of run around with the ball. The boss is going to just stay where he is. Potentially, he'll move around. Like the second boss, I believe, does move around as you have the ball and you're holding it. But some urgency to make it so that I throw the ball. Maybe a shot clock like there is in basketball, something like that. But otherwise, the pace was slightly slow, but overall combat does feel quite good. And finally, as I mentioned spikes just previously, this is my number one most egregious thing that I felt throughout the demo, is that spikes feel a little strict in terms of where you need to be to hit them. I'm going to show on screen right now a particular spike. Do you think that I should have hit this spike? Because my answer is yes. However, the game did not think so. Maybe my depth perception is really bad, and I admit that throughout the course of the demo, I did get a lot better at hitting those spikes. But they feel a little strict, and I think it would be more fun for the player to make them just hit like in a wider, just in like a bigger circle around the ball. I think that would just be nice. There's definitely some instances where it's a little tricky to do exactly what I want to do there. There's also a couple of instances now that I remember. I'm trying to spike the ball. It's kind of close to the ground, but it's not on the ground just yet. I wish there was a way to spike the ball when it was that low. Maybe a move to set the ball so that you can spike it again. Maybe, because currently when I jump and when I shoot, there's like a little bit of a delay. It seems like I have to get to a certain height before I can actually spike the ball. And I wish I could like do a tiny, tiny little bunny hop and spike the ball. I wish the controls let me do that, but it feels like there's some delay going on where you need a certain amount of time after you jump to be able to spike, or your jump goes to a certain height. I wish I could do a tiny little bunny hop and spike the ball. It just adds a little more control for the player. I think personally that would be pretty good. As I'm remembering, one last thing, you know how when you spike the ball, when you break the boss's stun bar, essentially break their stamina and they get stunned, and you can spike it multiple times in a row, make it so that if you keep spiking a bunch of times in a row, you get rewarded. Like maybe the second spike hits harder and has more hit stop. The third spike hits even harder and has more hit stop. That rewards hitting multiple spikes in a row. You know what I mean? It definitely sucks to not hit a spike. Like you miss like 50% of the guy's stun window. So it obviously is good to spike, but maybe do like some sort of ramping up mechanic right there. So those are my main points overall, I know that's kind of sounded like a lot, but overall, I actually really enjoyed the demo. I hope that the game succeeds and does well. And I think it seriously can, because the core of this is super unique, super fun. It's fun to keep trying the boss over and over again to get a better time, to perfect those couple of things. Yes, you know, when you're standing around waiting for the boss to do something, it's slightly boring. There's a little bit of downtime in there. But it is still fun to really get those things clean. Game's really fun. I really like it. I like the aesthetic. The music is great. The idea is super unique and interesting, and I had a really good time trying to improve my times on bosses and stuff like that. And I would like to see more of the game, and I'm really excited for what else the game has to offer in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.